From AfterBuzz TV's Chief Operating Officer Phil Svitek comes a weekly digital series that shares his insights, concepts, and findings from years of learning and mentorship. Welcome to Phil Svitek Podcast.
Hello and welcome. Today I want to talk about the importance of technology and how liberating it can be if you understand technology for your creative endeavors. First, let me define what I mean by tech. I mean it to be software, hardware, especially equipment. It could be methods and skills and systems and so forth. So that's what I mean by technology overall. Now, why is it important? Well, we all have these aspirations, and the bigger they are, right, the more hurdles there can be, and especially technological ones. Because when we often start something, we never want to get to a position, and this was me very early on, where I'm doing something and I say, oh, I don't know how to do this. And then I stop, right? That prevents us from fulfilling that creative endeavor. And so I've made a very big mission of mine that whenever I come to those roadblocks, that I try and learn whatever I can to try to overcome that roadblock, however it may be. And so whether it is learning a piece of equipment such as a camera and the various f-stops and apertures, so that way I can get proper lighting, or editing. I started off editing on a little Movie Maker-esque type program, and then my next program was Avid, and it was very intimidating, but I slowly but surely understood it after a while. Too many people that I know have these amazing ideas, and one of my pet peeves is that they never execute them, which is a shame because those ideas are amazing. And it's already hard enough, as you can imagine, to have these creative endeavors, and especially when they're collaborative ones, to bring them to life. And so technology is actually quite liberating and can help you along the path. But many artists that I know, they say, oh, I'm just creative, I don't know technology. Back when I met Kevin Undergaro in our filmmaking days when we were shooting his second feature, Adventures of Serial Buddies, he foretold that no longer are the days of just being a DP or just being an editor or something along those lines, especially for an indie filmmaker. You're going to have to wear all the hats, and we're going to have to know all those various things. Another sort of thing that I heard is, in today's day and age, you kind of have to know the whole pipeline of the creative endeavor, which includes distribution and marketing, right? So, for example, back in the day, if you were a writer for Friends, all you had to really do is focus on writing Friends, which is great, and it's a hard enough task in and of itself. However, in today's day and age, you have to do that in order to be successful and know how to put it up on YouTube, right? How to title it properly. All these various things go into it in order for you to be successful. So more than ever, all these things are great because they're at our fingertips, and the barrier to entry is, in terms of cost, is lower than ever. I mean, I remember back in the day, color correction system used to cost just $1 million. Now, yes, it's costly. It's, thousands of dollars, but certainly not $1 million. So the barrier entry is much cheaper. And I would also encourage you, there are also free versions of a lot of these stuff. Maybe they don't have all the bells and whistles. However, they're good starting points to build up your confidence with various technology and build to that full feature version of it. When we talk about the barrier to entry, another aspect to consider is that there's so many platforms for you to distribute your content. And it's up to you to really figure out which one's the right one. And also, you will have creative, let's say, restrictions, which might sound like a negative, but it's actually a positive in those various platforms. Now, what do I mean by this? Take IGTV, for example. I think it's a wonderful distribution platform for certain people, and can be quite meaningful and engaging in terms of audience. However, you have to film vertically. And, right now it's very new, and so no one understands the medium quite well, and everyone's trying to figure it out. And I think it's actually amazing, and you could play around with that. So, for example, maybe you're doing an interview. Instead of having to cut back and forth, you can just do a medium shot of yourself and a medium shot of the other person. So, when you start to understand technology, it becomes very liberating for you and the content you're creating, right? It forces restrictions. As I mentioned, it doesn't have to be a negative because it forces you to create something that hasn't yet existed. I think part of the problem in today's society is that we take all this technology for granted. It's all there at our fingertips, and so we feel maybe somewhat intimidated by it. However, I encourage you, there's plenty of resources out there, both free and inexpensive, for you to take advantage of. For example, one of the best ways that I learn a lot of the skills I picked up is a simple YouTube search. There, you'd be amazed by the tutorials that are out there on some of this technology, and I encourage you to watch them. But in addition to YouTube, there's other places for you to learn, such as lynda.com, spelled with a Y, Skillshare.com, and I also highly recommend this. It is so underutilized, but your public library. Your public library is free to you, and so why not take advantage of that? You'd be surprised at the resources at your library. Allow me to share a quote by filmmaker Robert Rodriguez, who, if you've been following this series, you know I admire. What I love about technology is that it really pushes the art. It really pushes it in a way you can't imagine until you come up with the idea. It's idea-based. You can do anything. Too many people I know are very intimidated by all the new things, and especially in today's day and age, so many new things are coming out day after day after day that it's like, how do you keep up with it? Well, number one, you don't have to keep up with all of it. You have to keep up with various factors, right? And so don't feel overwhelmed. Try to lessen it to the most manageable parts first, and especially go after what you're looking for, you know? Now, to that same notion, I would also encourage you to block out a day, whether once a month, maybe once a quarter, to also learn about other aspects, because you never know how other technologies can actually enhance and help your technology. James Cameron is a master of this. He sees the world as a very interconnected and is able to bring it into his filmmaking and so forth. And by that token, everything is interconnected, and I do encourage you to look at things like that. What do I mean by this? Back in the day, I used to look at math, and I was very good at math, and I had a lot of fun with it, and science and so forth, but I didn't necessarily know how it could help me with my creative endeavors. But now more than ever, I'm glad I did, because the logic and reasoning behind science and math, I'm able to apply to technology. See, I think therein lies the problem with creatives. Creativity can be somewhat illogical, and therefore, when it comes to technology, it's a very logic-based system, if you will. And, you know, sometimes we feel intimidated and we put up that restriction. Well, don't restrict yourself. Don't say, well, that's not for me. Instead, embrace it and learn to marry your creativity along with technology in order to create what you're after. Now, the second aspect of learning all these various things, and I know I've been harping it that you should learn this, but I do want to say that a lot of creative acts are collaborations. And so I encourage you to form a network of friends and so forth that you can learn together with. You know, you're not going to be able to understand and know all technology, but if you have a good network, a strong foundation of people around you, and you can bounce off ideas from them, it'll be great, because they'll learn from you, and conversely, you'll learn from them. So I highly encourage you to do that. And people are already there, especially now, today. If they're not in your immediate physical life, there are great apps such as meetup.com to find people that are local to you with a shared interest. Or, again, we live in this online digital age, so whether it is through social media or otherwise, there's so many platforms for you to go to and connect with people that aren't in your immediate vicinity. So there's no excuses not to be able to learn all these various things and to create that network of people to help you along the way. Another aspect that I feel like blocks creative people from advancing forward is that they have this new technology, they're intimidated by it, and they don't want to do something until they've mastered it. Well, I encourage you very highly to just take whatever it is and just play around. That's how I learned a lot of the things that I know today, is just trial and error. And so, whether it is editing, just shoot some footage on your phone, right? If you don't have a camera, it doesn't have to be much. All you're really looking for is just to learn the basics of editing. So take a couple of shots here and there and cut them together. So you start to understand the basics of, in this case, editing. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to your ambitions, you want to take it and boil it down to the smallest actionable step. And so it is so with technology. You want to, whatever you can do, whatever that first step is, Whether let's say it is editing, ingesting just footage, maybe that's the first hurdle, then do that. And after that, okay, well, how do I get it into my timeline? And so forth until you start to build. Do not be overwhelmed where you're like, okay, I'm going to shoot a feature film and then I'm going to edit it. Start very simple and then build up. It will liberate you. It's all about these small trial and errors because you'll get good at whatever it is. Now, before I wrap out, I want to highlight other resources for you to learn technology. I've already highlighted YouTube tutorials, lynda.com, Skillshare, your library. But I also encourage you to go to Barnes & Noble and read the trades, whether it is American Cinematographer or other things of that nature. And of course, there's trade shows, whether that be the NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters, or CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Showcase. Those are great resources for you to, if you can go, great. But even if not, just read about what's happening in those places at those times. And overall, the message being that continue to learn. Don't close yourself off. This is a constantly evolving medium and world that we live in, and it can actually be easier for you to do what you're after. So continue to learn and continue to work on your craft, and I'm excited what you bring to the table.
Now, before we click away to another lesson from Phil, here's a few more things. Please be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this episode and tell your friends and family about us. Leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions and what lessons you would like to see Phil tackle next. The more specific you are with your questions, the better he can answer them. To be notified when future episodes release, subscribe on either Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or what other platform is most convenient to you. Specific links are provided below. Lastly, if you're interested in joining AfterBuzz TV as a host or as an intern, visit AfterBuzz TV's contact page. A direct link is provided. Or of course, you can tweet at PhilSpeedTech or Instagram me at BonjourJuliette. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Julie Bear, a producer on the show, and we will see you next week with Phil's final lesson of 2018. What could it be? Find out next week. Until then, venture forth with your creative endeavors.